guys, welcome back to another episode of Let's Swipe. I am doing the intro today because our two lovely ladies here, the magnificent Amanda and the marvelous Amy, have an adventure for us today. So, hello, dear listeners. Hope you're doing well. And ladies, what do you have for us today?
Well, as the listeners know, Amy and I have been not too keen on swiping lately. I did get back on the sites this week, so I might talk about that later, but we were trying to figure out what can we do, right? So we've talked on here about speed dating and all this stuff. Well, we joined the meetup.com, which is in most cities, where just like different people get together for whatever reasons. There's like, hiking groups and contra dancing groups and like all sorts of stuff, but there are like singles meetups groups. So we did one of those. So we met at a bar. This was, of course, my first indoor socializing post-COVID. So yeah, we had a private room in the back. Amy and I got there. We were a little late. I think we were like 40.
Yeah, that was my fault because I was running late.
But I mean, it was fine because nobody had like really even gotten their drinks or anything. It didn't look like when we got there. So we came in late, but they had set up two rows of tables. And so we walk in and the one row of table was completely full. And then it was just us where there was no room for us to sit. And so we were like, oh no,
And this is the first time Amanda and I are talking about it. We purposely did not talk about this, so our reactions are in real time because we haven't discussed this amongst ourselves yet even. I feel like it was a very comical thing because, like, it feels like the majority of the women were on one end of the table and the majority of the men were on the opposite end of the table. And so we sat down and then everybody was like, okay, well, do we just pull another table over or what do we do? And so 3 out of 4 of the guys at the end of the table got up and moved to our table. And then
Really?
in my mind, I'm just like, okay, do they see fresh meat or are they just trying to be nice or what's going on here? But it was just like, whoa, chill. I'm a little weirded out.
And then there ended up being a fourth gentleman who came. He was a little later than us, and so he sat with us as well.
Yeah. I feel like we were definitely, like, everybody at our table was the newbies versus the other table, which I think a lot of those people, I got the impression that they kind of knew each other from before, maybe.
Yeah, I think definitely the people at like one end of that table for sure did. And then like the host came over to our table and was like really great. And he was like very welcoming when we came in and he sat and talked with us and he did his best to like mingle and like hop between tables and he sat in a few different seats. I had a great time. I'm going to just preface by saying I had a great time. But one of the things that I thought was a little awkward about it being a singles event and having us seated at tables, it really did not allow for mingling and movement. So luckily, at least, especially a couple of the guys that we were sitting next to were like really interesting. And I feel like we really, all 4 of us were having a good time talking. But like, imagine that like we had not, right? And then we're just stuck there for like 2 hours at the same table because there was no flow or movement.
Yeah, there was one of the initial guys, the guys that came over when we first got there. He was a very nice guy, and I think he admitted to being to having Asperger's at some point when we did our introduction. So I'm gonna give him total credit for getting out there and being making the introduction and talking to us. But I could kind of tell he was trying really hard and he was probably a little nervous just because I don't think he necessarily knew what to talk about exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, I actually really like in many ways appreciate it because he was very talkative and I think I forget his name, not that we're going to say names anyway, but he was really talkative and super friendly and nice. The only thing that was And I think this is what made me think about, like, man, we really can't move or anything. It's because he was sitting across from me, and then Amy was like on the end table, and he wasn't picking up on cues that, like, oh, we're tuning into like some of the other conversations at
Yeah.
this table, and he would just talk directly to me or just directly to Amy, and that's fine. I get it, no big deal. But it was a little like, okay, that it really sucks because, like, I can't get up and move because that's rude, and there's also nowhere to really go because everybody's sitting down. After this guy said, hey, I have Asperger's, which, I mean, a lot of people have Asperger's, not a big deal. But someone else was like, oh, hey, I have Asperger's. And so then he went over to talk to that guy, and they were kind of talking about experiences. So, and then we had the two gentlemen that we spent the most time talking to. One was really young. He's almost 30, but he really kept wanting to be like, I am 30. He was like, well, I'll be 30 this summer. Well, I'll be 30 this summer.
For being as young as he was, he came across like the knowledge and the wisdom and just the way, like, his mannerisms.
Mm-hmm.
He was a very, very adult 30.
Yeah, I feel like he is kind of an old soul.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And then the other guy, I think he was probably about our age, and he was really, just really, like, sweet and interesting.
And he had a really sexy accent.
Yeah, and during the introductions, he just said he's from Africa, and he just said Africa, but I don't think he ever said what country specifically in Africa, but he had a really cool accent.
And he was really, really tall.
Oh my gosh, he was so tall because we stood up for like a group picture, and I was dwarfed by everyone.
Shoulder.
Yeah. But no, I mean, it was really fun. So, like, yeah, my only critique was just sort of the way we were stuck.
Yeah.
I really loved, like, we had some really in-depth, deep, cool conversations. It wasn't just small talk because that was also a benefit. It's like, well, we did end up talking to, and I'm just going to give them names.
Bob and Joe.
Bob and Joe. We ended up talking to Bob and Joe for most of the night, and we really were talking about fun and cool and interesting things. Whereas if we had been mingling, we probably would have talked to them for like 20 minutes, then moved on to someone else and not gotten into the deep conversation. But we talked about a lot with this guy. It was really cool.
What about the women? Like, did any of them ever get up and be like, hey?
We barely even talk to them. I feel really bad because we didn't mingle with them at all.
Well, they were sitting on the other side of the room. There was no opportunity for us to mingle with them.
But at the same time, they're seeing new people. You think they'd be like, I mean, obviously, you may or may not be their target demographic, but you'd think if, like, they were kind of new, everybody else there, and you see these newbies, to get up and be like, oh, hi, I'm blah, blah, blah.
It was really one of those situations where, because we were in a private room in a restaurant, and so, like, when they put a bunch of tables together and you're on a long table, if you're sitting on the long table next to the wall, like, it's not easy to get out. So you're kind of stuck.
And then all the women were, like, on the opposite corner, opposite side. So, like, we were as far away from all the other women as we could possibly be. So there wasn't a lot of room to mingle.
My favorite part of the night, though, the most comical to me, like, part of the night was when we first came in, and I'm wearing jeans and Sparrows, like slip-on shoes, and I was wearing a navy blue and white polka dot shirt, as is my way, and I have like 5 navy, I have a lot of shirts that look like that, but I was wearing this navy polka dot shirt and, a cardigan over it, and I come in and I sit down, and the host had come over to greet us. And he was like, oh, I like your style. Very 90s. I was like, oh. And then Amy looked at me and she's like, oh, well, that makes sense. Kind of joking, just because, like, of our age. And I mean, I do love the 90s. I mean, but I didn't think I was dressed like the 90s. And so it was funny. So then he was like, oh, well, why is that funny? Ha ha ha. And he's 45. He thought we were in our 30s. Which I have not gotten that for a while.
That was That was I was relating this story to someone else, and I told them, I'm like, yeah, that when we first got there, I don't think anybody believed us at first. That when we told them we were in our 40s, I feel like we had to do some convincing to make people believe that we were like, early 40s.
I will say that they did seem a little taken aback. And like I said, I only noticed because I feel like it's been a little while since that's happened to me. But yeah, he was like, "Oh, what?" And then even the young guy was like, "Really?" He looked at me, he was like, "You are?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I was just like, sunscreen, baby. But it was just like the 90s comment just like cracked me up because I was like, okay, like I didn't know that my style was 90s. Am I this person that is like so unstylish that I'm 3 decades behind?
I don't think you looked especially 90s. I think he was probably projecting.
That's funny. And then the other comment that cracked me up, I didn't talk hardly at all about camping or anything, but when we were talking to, I'll call Joe the young guy, when we were talking to Joe, I don't know how, we were talking about like cars.
Our topic went like a ping pong ball. I mean, it just went all over the place.
It really did. But we'd covered hobbies and everything, but I didn't really mention national parks or hiking or anything. And we somehow got on the topic of cars and et cetera, and then big purchases. And I said something about how, well, I have a bigger car because I ultimately want to get like a trailer, like a teardrop trailer or something. And Joe just looks at me and is like, yeah, that's so totally you. That's so you. And I was just like, that is really funny. So I was obviously sending off some 90s vibes and some like
granola girl
vibes, which, I mean, hey, that is the 90s, I guess. My 90s, that's where I was living. So I just thought that was really funny.
I told when I was talking to one of my friends, the first thing he asked me was, well, would you do it again? And I said, yeah, I think I definitely would do it again. I feel like I want to go, if there's a certain core group of people that do it, I kind of want to meet some of those other people. And I also want to see if they're like how the dynamic is, like how many new people show up, or if if it's like the same single people who are always there. I want to do it again just to get an idea of how the group flows.
Yeah, I want to do it again, and ideally in a setting where, yes, we can still sit down and talk to each other, but that maybe there is more opportunity to talk to the other people. I will say it seemed to me, well, I don't know, people in their mid-40s who are not people that I'm friends with seem way older to me than we do.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you said that. I was trying to think of a way to say it without sounding horrible. Like I went through the RSVP list and looked at the different people who were there and tried to match up. Okay, this was that one. I don't remember anybody's name outside of the two guys that we were talking to, Joe and Bob. And that was my first thought too, was, oh my gosh, all of these women look so much older than us.
Yeah, and I don't know, they may have been older than us. Like some of the people were older. Like there was somebody who was retired from, fill-in big engineering company in our fair city. It just seemed like there were clearly a few people who were in their late 20s, and then there was us and Bob and the host. We were all in our 40s, I think.
And I couldn't tell you about any of those women. Like I feel like they were all on the opposite end of the 40s or maybe early 50s, some of them. And then there was one woman I would say was probably closer to retirement age. I mean, it's so hard to say, and I don't even want to make guesses because I'm probably way off.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I don't really care how old the women are. I mean, that doesn't impact me. So, but it was a really, I mean, I guess in a way that was cool. Like, I mean, there were people in their 30, late 20s all the way up, and that's neat. But since there were only like 18 people or 15 people, that doesn't spread out to very many options if you want to be with somebody who's like at least moderately within your age group.
Yeah. And I find it funny that the person that we got an email from, we're calling him Joe, right?
Yeah.
Well, you got an email from Joe, and he's like, hey, if you guys ever want to hang out, And I was really excited about that because I'm like, he was so much fun to talk to. I'm super excited that he reached out, and I hope that I really want to integrate him into like our friend circle because he seems like he's really awesome and just a super fun guy. So for that in and of itself, I feel like it was a successful evening because we made a friend.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we talked about like he was trying to convince me that cruise vacations are ones worth taking because I'm kind of a little anti-cruise, and we somehow were talking about cruises. So then I was like, all right, you convinced me. Like, I'll go on a cruise. He's like, well, I'll go on a cruise. I'm like, all right, fine. And so then I'm like, yeah, you come too. We'll all go on one. And so like we were joking about that in the message. And I mean, he's a really cool guy. He works like on the road during the week, and then he's home on the weekends. So, I don't know. It'll be neat to see him at other events and stuff like that. So
what kind of introductions were you folks doing? Like the official, like, hey, I mean, I assume there was a group introduction, like the stand up, blah, blah, blah. Like from what you can remember of like the other people, I mean, obviously there's a range of like age groups and types, but I mean, can you like, what was the gist of like the folks? I mean, was it, was it just a little bit of everybody there as far as you can tell? Then what can you remember the most of like some of the introductions?
yeah, so the introductions, like I said, when we first got there, the host, like I said, was like very, very opening and friendly, and he came over and talked to us for a while. About like an hour or so into us being there, the host was like, hey guys, let's do some quick introduction. Tell us who you are and one thing about you. One thing about you think everyone should know. That's how he phrased it.
Hmm.
Which I think is kind of a, I don't know, high stakes sort of like, okay, one thing I think everybody here should know. I mean, it's a little off-putting, especially when you're people who don't know each other, and so anyway, whatever. That's just my personal take on that. But we went around the room, and the only people that really talked about, hey, I'm coming here to like meet people. There were only a couple people who said that really. Mm-hmm. So Joe said that, and then one of the women said, hey, I'm here because I hate online dating, and I'm that's why I'm here. And I thought that was a little strange for it being a quote unquote singles group. Said one or two people said that they liked coming to these events to just get to socialize with other people who are single, because so many of their friends are married with kids and just have different focuses. I didn't get the feel that it was like a pickup thing at all. I got the feel that it's just like, hey, single people, and then maybe if somebody hits it off, cool. Amy, did you have a different take?
I was just, I know after that happened, I turned to you and I looked at you and kind of smiled, and I'm like, 30-second commercial time. It was like that. It felt very much like when you go on an interview and someone says, so tell me about yourself. Mm-hmm. That's what it felt like for me. So I'm like, okay, well, assume I'm on an interview. What should someone know about me? So I'm like, when I got up for mine, the first thing I said was I tried to make a joke. And then I'm like, no, I'm not going to make that joke because I don't want to be insensitive to someone who... And then someone else kind of picked up on that joke and ran with it. And then it's like, oh, wrong meeting, And so then I tried to get it back on track. And I listed 3 hobbies that I had. So I really didn't follow any of the whole, well, okay, it's a singles group. We're obviously all here because we're single. I didn't hear him say one thing about yourself. So I didn't even answer the question correctly. So
Yeah, and so then when he got to me, because I was right after Amy, he's like, and no one, Amy was not the only one who listed more than one thing. Like everybody, there was like two people who just said one quick thing. And so then it gets to me and he's like, all right, one thing. Okay. And I was like, hi, I'm Amanda. And he's like, okay, that's your thing. That's one thing about you.
Really?
And he was trying to be funny.
Yeah. It didn't come across well at all.
And so I just said, well, I'm shy, so that's fine with me to not have to say anything more. Because I was a little bit like, okay, buddy, like you don't know me. This is my first time here. I'm doing introductions. That you should always assume that that's kind of nerve-wracking for people. And again, he had no intent to make me feel bad or anything, but so that kind of grated on me. But
I was really put off by him from the get-go. I don't know how to explain it, but I was really happy when he got up and left because I really didn't want to talk to him.
well, I feel like when he got up and left, and both times he got up and left, and then we were able to really talk to Joe and Bob.
Yeah.
We just had it was just such good conversations.
Yeah.
And then at one point it was just Joe, me, and Amy because Bob was talking to somebody who through the introductions had said they work in the same field. So they ended up moving over and talking to each other. So Joe and Amy and I were talking, and then Amy got up to go to the ladies' room. And normally, if I'm in a group setting with people that I don't know that well, and then it's like, oh shit, all of a sudden I'm one-on-one with somebody, I always get that little bit of oh, what do I say? What do I do? Because I, again, am shy and have social anxiety. But Amy got up and it was just it didn't matter. It was just we were just the three of us, I feel like were really just in the zone having great conversations. So I hope I see him again. I mean, he was very much message me anytime. I'd love to hang out, let me know about the cruise plans, he's just kind of a cool guy, and I'm not angling for any sort of romantic relationship with him, but I'm also not going to shut the door on it. I mean, he's way too young for me, but it's whatever.
Yeah, he's cool. It's just somebody there's always room for another cool person in one's life, So
yeah.
All in all, I will say that I'm going to call last night a success, especially because we were both kind of I don't know. I don't know if I really am up for this. And then you're like, I'll rally. And then I wrote you back, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm up for it either, but I'll rally too. And then we kind of had to convince each other to do it.
Yeah, I was so hoping. I did not want to go because I was exhausted on Saturday. I had had a little too much fun the night before, and then I didn't have a restful day, and so I did not want to go, and I was like, fuck. So I texted Amy and I was like, so are we still on for tonight? And then I didn't hear anything for a while, and I was like, I'm really tired, but I could rally. Because I was I don't want to be the one that cancels, but I just want to plant the seed that I'm okay if we cancel. And then Amy, I think, wrote we should go. I'm tired too, but we should go. And I was like, all right. And then we had I thought we were going to leave. I was we're going to stay an hour and go. That's really what I thought. But we closed the place down.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is inspirational to our dear listeners. Hey, when it's time for you to get back out there in real life, if it's something like this or just anything, and you're I don't really, let me see if I can get out of this a little bit. Remember today's episode and rally forth, and go out there and live your lives and have fun. Because if nothing else, you're going to have a story out of it. So I'm really stoked for you all. That's awesome. Very nice.
I keep referring to this friend. We'll call him New Mexico, since I call everybody by their state names. When he got his second vaccination, he was talking about how euphoric he felt and he couldn't wait to get back out there and get back out and be around people. And I think he's a lot more of an extrovert than I am. And I got my second vaccine, and after I spent 2 days being really sick, then I'm just like, I don't want to go back out and be around people. I don't like people. I don't want to go back out there. So I've been really like not wanting to go back out and rejoin society because I'm perfectly happy hiding in my cave and grumbling at everybody. So it was very refreshing to make myself do it, and I feel a lot better for getting back out there and being around people because they're actually not as awful as I think.
I totally get what you're saying. I also felt like it was just good to kind of have good quality conversations with strangers. And I mean, no one that we met last night, I don't think is gonna like end up being a romantic possibility, really. But even with that, I think it was just kind of nice to have the experience of like really getting into good conversations with someone when you haven't met them before. Because, like we've been experiencing through online dating, just like so much of the bullshit conversations like through online, that it was just a good reminder that like, oh yeah, you actually can just like meet somebody, and even if it's not going to go anywhere, have like a kick-ass conversation with them.
Well, I remember at one point you and Joe were having a conversation about, I don't remember exactly what the connotations were, but it was, it was probably a little bit more on the political, socio, economic kind of side of things. And he was like, kind of apologetic because he's like, oh, I don't want to take it there if you guys aren't comfortable. And I remember I'm just like, are you kidding? This is intelligent conversation. I haven't had intelligent conversation in like months. This is so cool.
Yeah, it was so great. And I mean, also it was a little easier because like we were all on the same page. I mean,
yeah,
I could see not wanting to get into a political discussion and argue with somebody at an event like this. But we were all just sort of like we maybe had slightly different views, but we were still, in the same book.
right, on the same side of the fence.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was cool. He was, he was a cool dude, and Bob was really cool also. I don't feel like we got to talk to him as much. He was sitting
a little bit more quiet.
He was a little bit more quiet, but he was just a sweetheart.
Don't usually go for that type, but when he was standing behind me and I looked back and I'm just like,
oh, he was good looking.
He was really good looking.
Yeah, and I mean, just like also just like so sweet. Like he just had like a sweet face and demeanor.
Yeah, and he was standing behind me when we took that picture, and I'm just like, I'm so glad there's someone else here who's taller than me. And he kind of looked down and he's like, you are tall. I'm just like, oh, you noticed.
Today I did go on Meetup to try to find other groups, because I think that this could be something that I do with some regularity as a way to meet people as opposed to online. I did get back online. I got back on OkCupid and I got on Tinder. A couple of hotties who messaged me, one on Tinder, one on OkCupid. The one on Tinder, I don't know. Well, he matched with me. I don't know if we ever messaged. I don't know. And then the one on OkCupid. Okay, so I messaged him because on OkCupid, I'm just like, if I match with somebody, I'm messaging them. So I matched with him, and he said he liked national parks. So I was like, hey, oh, I see you like national parks, blah, blah. What's one of your travel stories from one of your adventures? Like, not like, what park do you like? Because, like, who the fuck cares? Oh, okay, you like Yellowstone the best? All right. So, like, tell me a fucking story. So now I, like, phrase that question, tell me a story, and I usually get good responses. So then I asked that question, and he writes back, and he said, oh, I think that question is better answered over a date. And so I write back, oh, so where are we going on our date then? Which I thought was like very cute.
That was brilliant.
And then he's like, He's like, oh, he's like, I really like to get to know somebody first before I go out on a date with them. I'm like, well, I fucking
Oh my
asked you a
God.
question and you didn't answer it. So then he asked me, what do you, how long have you been online dating and what are you looking for on here? And so then I told him, blah, blah. I mean, looking for the same thing everybody who doesn't just want to hook up is looking for, right? So I tell him this, and then I was like, well, what about you? And then I asked him another question, like a getting to know you question. And then he responds this long thing about what he's looking for. He's like, I'm looking for like a nice girl who's intelligent and but all this whole like list of shit. And he's like, I want somebody who can finish my sentences for me and vice versa, blah blah blah. Okay, cool, whatever. Like again, that's what everybody is kind of looking for. Whatever. It's like it's a dumb question unless basically, are you looking for a hookup or not? Okay. That's what that question is trying to get at. But like he really went into detail. Okay, fine. He did not answer the like actually getting to know you question that I asked. What the fuck am I supposed to do with this? So then I responded. I was like, oh, all of that sounds great. And he's talked about communication. I was like, communication is definitely key. And so then I just said, so what is your preferred way to get to know someone? Because obviously it is not by answering any motherfucking questions. So I am just like again reminded that this is what I'm working with on online dating. I've been talking to several guys because of course like I had completely disabled my account. So when you get back on after being like completely gone, you kind of are put out there, right? There's one guy that I'm talking to that it's like a nice conversation. It's going well, so we'll see. And then on Tinder, I had this guy I matched with. I don't even know how he did this, but he sent me a message that said, "How are you?" Like letter R, letter U. And I didn't respond to it, but I didn't like unmatch either. I was just like, whatever. But then I noticed I had a new message from him. And then this message just said, and listeners, if you're listening, which by now you should not be listening with young ears, but if you are, you might
Cover
want to
them.
turn down the volume. So this message just says, "Can I eat your pussy?"
You should have wrote back and said, no, my cat is too precious to me. Like your real cat, your
Yeah.
four-legged cat. I would have said something snarky back.
I just unmatched him because I'm like, I don't have time for this tomfoolery. Yeah. I mean, I wanted to write back and be like, does that work? Like, does this work for you? That's what I should have asked.
So I turned Tinder back on a couple of weeks ago, and I have yet to have any sort of like all the conversations I've had have been pretty lame. But I got an email from a guy and it literally said, hi. Like, I kind of decided that if somebody sends me a lame message like that, my response is going to be, hi.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take the time to actually craft a response if you're not going to either.
Definitely.
And especially if you didn't fill out your profile and I have absolutely nothing to ask you a question about. So you want to waste my time, I'll waste yours too. Either figure out something to start a conversation on or move along.
Yeah, I agree. So, I mean, I'm not really looking forward to being back on the swiping sites, but I am happy about the one conversation I'm having. We'll see, whatever. But I am looking forward to doing more of the in-person stuff.
Yeah, I'm way more excited about more potential in-person stuff. I felt much more like I wasn't expecting to have a lightning bolt kind of moment or anything like that, but I just feel like it was more I feel like I got so much more out of it by, being in person and like obviously we connected with these two random strangers, but it didn't have to be anything more than like, okay, we had an awesome conversation And that's still better than swiping endlessly.
Yes, definitely.
What are your goals, I guess, like both online and, I mean, obviously offline is going to another meetup of some sort, if not that particular group, but like something similar. But do you have any other things you want to try to shoot for, like online, or just kind of see like if you get some better some better pickup lines like online, or what do you want to do in the future for online dating?
Well, I mean, now that I'm vaccinated and more other people are too, I prefer to meet people early. So I mean, I'm hoping to talk to people a few times and then meet. So like this guy I've talked to quite a bit in the last like 36 hours. I want to be like, "Hey, do you want to like get together, and grab a drink this week and just meet in person?" Because like why else, like I don't you guys know and our listeners know, I don't really like the communication through text and all of that. So and so that's part of why I got onto Tinder. Usually it seems like it's easier to jump offline from Tinder than it is on OkCupid. On OkCupid, people are like, we need to be like fucking engaged before we meet offline. But I mean, my goal has been the same that it's been all year, like my ultimate goals, right?
I guess my goal is to have a date because I haven't had a date in over a year since well before COVID lockdown started. So I guess my ultimate goal would be to have an actual real date with a real person. Beyond that, I couldn't really say.
What do you think our goals should be?
I didn't know. I mean, obviously there would be the end goals, which are admirable, but I didn't know if there was any short term, like let's see if we can bag one of these online folks and get one of them like to meet in real life in the next couple weeks. Not that you're just gonna grab some rando. Besides the more eager to meet, like physically, folks are not. Um, but just get a few more folks lined up. And just kind of see,
Yeah.
what else, what's out there.
Well, yeah, I mean that, and like I said, that's always my goal. Like non-COVID times, always my goal. Like, and even in COVID, I'm glad I met everybody I met. Yeah, there's no, I don't really understand people who just want to keep communicating, but I also do feel like a lot of guys are put off by women who are like, "Hey, do you want to meet?" Like, I think it's bullshit. I think it's gendered bullshit. It's like this lie that that the guy has to do the chasing and all of that, and it's like, it's just like, no, can we just like meet and see if there's anything here? Like, I'm not asking to marry you. I just want to like meet. Otherwise, why are we talking? And so, yeah, I don't want to meet. Like, I was joking with the guy after like the one message, where are we gonna go on our date? But it's like, what else am I supposed to respond to that? It's like,
Yeah.
you know, um, if I ask you questions and you don't want to answer them because you think they're better said in person, then I guess we should just be meeting in person. Like, what the fuck?
And the funny thing is, and not to cut in, but like we've all, I feel like we've experienced something where you're like, oh, hello, person, like blah blah blah, and they're like, so like you want to hang out, and you're like, well, I mean, yeah, but I mean,
Yeah,
and not saying that your questions were like, oh, that's nice, like, but let's meet out on a date. Like, I don't know if maybe, if we say something even kind of similar, even jokingly, like these dudes just can't handle it because they're just like, ugh, and you're just like, first of all, that was a joke. Like, come
yeah,
on. And secondly, like, you do the same thing, not this particular person, but like just overall, like, or I should say, we receive that on like so often. It's just like,
right.
oh, hi, hey, like, I'm like, yeah, can we,
Yeah,
maybe I would not maybe, but I mean, can we have a half conversation first before
Yeah,
I go somewhere? Like,
there
who are you?
definitely needs to be like several messages back and forth, but like I don't think things need to be drawn out. Like I don't need to talk to you for a week online before we meet. Like, right? Like I just it's like and if you need to talk to me that long, okay, fine, that's fine. But like if we were at a bar, we would just have met already. Like it isn't some big thing to meet someone in person. And I actually was listening to this TED Talk, and I don't know who it was, so I apologize. But she was talking about how she was very purposeful when she went on online dating, and she would very quickly set up dates. But she would even set up like 3 dates in one night. So she would just do an hour-long date, and she would even tell them like, oh hey, do you want to meet for a drink or something? And be like, I have something at 8 o'clock, but I can definitely grab a quick drink just so we can meet. And she's like, because you can tell a lot in just like an hour. You can tell if there's something to continue talking to them, if you want to, and then just set up a second date. Like your first date doesn't have to be like some like epic long thing. So she's like, and she did that, and she married like the third guy she went out with.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it's like, yeah, why spend the time doing all of these back and forth texting when probably it's going to fizzle? Like, and we know that from COVID dating. How many of the people that we talked to over COVID, Erica notwithstanding because you met people, but like me and Amy, who it was like, well, if we'd actually been able to like progress, maybe there would have been something there. But it fizzled out because we weren't meeting, or we weren't, getting within 6 feet of each other. So it's like, yeah, I mean, just meet. Like, no pressure. Have a drink for like an hour and then get out of there.
Yeah, well, maybe that's something to kind of semi as well as possible, like plan on. Like, if any nibbles come in real life or online that seem like there could be something, just be like, hey, you got an hour, I got an hour, or something similar, and then just see how that plays out over the next several interactions.
Well, this is kind of like the idea of speed dating. Just you give a certain amount of time and then, okay, on to the next, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, the problem is I just feel like there are so many people online who just want to dick around and they don't actually want to meet. No pun intended.
That was really good. That was a pretty good pun. Oh, I have a thing for that. Das hat sie gesagt.
That's what she said?
That's what she said.
In German. Well, on that note, Erica, do you want to take us out?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that is it for today. It has been a illuminating experience, and I'm super stoked for Amy and Amanda, like the fun experiences they've had and the interesting interactions online that they've had. And I hope you guys got a big kick out of this. As always, we want to hear feedback from you. If you've got similar stories, if you're starting to venture out there in the real world, if you've had any unsolicited, very intimate encounters, please tell us all about it. You can do that by sending us an email at letswipepod@gmail.com. And always go check out like Amy's fabulous artwork and contact us via Instagram and send any interesting online interactions if you feel like doing so at Let's Swipe Podcast with no apostrophe on the Instagram. I'm probably saying that like a super old lady because I don't know my stuff. We love you, and always thanks for listening.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.